Good evening, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Council of the City of Long Beach, held Tuesday, June 15th, 2021 at 7 p.m. We'll have a roll call. Councilmember Delury.
Present.
Councilmember Mandel.
Present.
Councilmember Treston.
Here.
Vice President McGinnis.
Present.
President Bendo.
Present.
Let the record indicate the presence of City Manager Donna Gaten and Deputy Corporation Counsel Richard Berrios. So now a salute to the flag.
Councilman Mandel, would you lead us, please?
Thank you, President Bendo. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our second in-person meeting, and we're all back up on the dais again for the first time in a long time. So why don't we begin with the city manager's report?
Good evening, everyone. Our city manager's report, or my city manager's report, will be a little different tonight. We have three different. It is on.
Oh, okay.
It's on.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? Yep. We have three different presentations tonight. The first presentation is going to be from our auditors, Bonadia, and it's going to be Timothy Dole and Heather Briggs, and they're going to talk about our last audit that ended June 30th of 2020. Yes.
I don't think there's enough room for you to be down there.
You guys, the front row is reserved for you guys if you want to go down and see. And for our viewers at home, the presentations are all on the City Council agenda page, PDFs at the end of the page.
All right. Thank you. My name is Tim Doyle. I'm the partner on your engagement, and we have Heather Briggs with us here as well from the Bonadio Group. You should have received several deliverables, which we've noted up on the screen. A required communication letter, which is a letter that's required on all audits to be provided to the Board of Governance. Your basic financial statements, your uniform guidance single audit or federal compliance audit, your New York State DOT or Department of Transportation audit, and then finally an internal control matters letter. On the required communication letter, as we mentioned, it is a required letter that requires your auditor to put certain items in writing to the Board of Governance. We just noted a couple of noteworthy items. Most of the items tend to be static or the same from year to year. Some noteworthy items that we had there, GASB 95 was implemented. This standard was issued in May of 2020. Due to the pandemic, it postponed many required standards, and in this case, it postponed the GASB 84 fiduciary activity standards, which is a standard that requires certain reporting changes to your fiduciary activities. So that was not implemented. GASB 95 was implemented, pushing it. GASB 84 will be required next year. Also, the letter notes certain significant estimates and disclosures to communicate to you that they are estimates and there are significant disclosures in the statements, very standard. And then we also noted no disagreements with management relating to any financial accounting, reporting, or auditing matters. And again, we're required to note if we had. It's very standard, and we're happy to say there were none. So our first audit report is on your financial statements. So the thick package that you have that is your final financial statements. We issue an auditor's opinion on those statements, and we issued an unmodified opinion, meaning the highest level an auditor can provide. It means that we obtain sufficient audit evidence to support those numbers within the statements as well as the disclosures and the footnotes. We're also required to issue a governmental auditing standards report on internal controls over financial reporting, and report on compliance and other matters. We noted no material weaknesses in your internal controls over financial reporting and no significant deficiencies in those controls as well. On your compliance and other matters, we noted no instances of non-compliance or other matters that could result in a material financial statement change. Heather will take you through some of the financial highlights.
All right, so some of the financial highlights in summary, the city issued $35 million in bonds, and what that did was increased your restricted fund balance by about $35 million. There was also a $1.6 million increase in your general fund. There were some reduced revenues due to the pandemic shutdown, mostly in your beach area, your beach fees, anything that was fee related that the public would go to. In your governmental activities, you had an unrestricted net position in the prior year of $239 million, and that got larger to $439 million deficit. And the major reason for that this year was threefold. Your OPEB liability increased, and your pension liability increased approximately $25 million, and we anticipate the OPEB liability to increase significantly in 2021 due to the decrease in the discount rate that should happen. There was also the final judgment in the Haberman litigation, which increased your liabilities about $140 million net, and that included the $20.5 million offset. Your uniform guidance audit, the auditor's report issued on compliance was unmodified. The report on internal control over direct and material compliance requirements for the major programs, those that are direct and material to those specific programs tested. There were no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies reported. And in your New York State Department of Transportation single audit, there was also an unmodified report issued on compliance, and the report on internal control over direct and material compliance with the requirements for those major programs were also no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies reported.
So on the first three auditors' reports that we talked about, again, our responsibility is to determine whether your financial statements and or your compliance with certain programs is in all material respects fairly stated. And we noted unmodified opinions on our opinions on those reports, and we noted no material weaknesses. Now, these all relate to the internal controls over financial reporting and the financial statements and those numbers contained therein. We also issued what you call a management letter or an internal controls matters letter. When we talked before about material weaknesses and significant deficiencies, a material weakness in your internal controls is a deficiency whereby during the normal course of your activities, you would not in a timely fashion become aware of either a material fraud or error in those financial statements. What we have here in internal control matters are lesser items. These are best practices, areas where we feel you can improve, but they're not a deficiency that would rise to that level of being in the report and being a material weakness or significant deficiency. The management letter pointed out several items that we thought are areas for you guys to improve, Some of the notable items that we had in there were some policy and procedures improvements, financial statement audit readiness. We did find this year that it was a little bit of a difficult audit in that some of the staff were out for different COVID-related reasons, and so the audit sort of was a stop and start kind of thing. So it delayed the audit a little bit. We just talked about that process improving going forward. We also noted several controls that while the controls were functioning properly, they were manual and in some cases not consistent. An example might be your timesheet process, whereby they are done differently for different departments and they are manual versus an integrated system. So we talked about and made recommendations for how that could be improved. And then lastly, while our opinion notes that the financial statements are fairly stated and we did not note any internal control issues, we did want to make note that there is fiscal stress considerations. As you all are aware, OSC each year puts out a fiscal stress score on all local governments. And some of the things that they've indicated and that they look at there are fund balances, operating deficits, those types of things. So we made some recommendations in there. As Heather mentioned, the pension and OPEB liabilities that on your entity-wide statement are very large liabilities. One of the things that we have seen is that the discount rate is starting to lower, and that has an inverse relationship to those liabilities. And when that lowers, those liabilities are going to go up. They will go up next year. We know that those discount rates are going to be going lower. So that's also a significant reason why your net position is very low also, is those types of items. So we noted some of those areas just for you to be aware of. And so I think that's the end of our report. But certainly if the council has any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Can you explain what OPEB stands for?
Yes. So OPEB, sorry, sometimes our auditors get into our jargon and that. OPEB is other post-employment benefits liability. So these are, other than pension, these are other types of benefits in retirement that have been contractually bargained, and so you would owe those into the future. This is a present value of what you'll owe into the future, and they tend to be very large numbers.
So you're saying in 1 year, the OPEB obligation would have $25 million, is that correct?
Well, that's a combination
Yeah.
of OPEB and
Both,
pension.
both,
And
right.
pension, okay.
Right. And those values are based upon current activity, but also a lot of assumptions. The plans work into their assumption, what will the health care trend rate be for costs? What will a discount rate when they're present valuing it be? What are the cost of living adjustments? There's a lot of assumptions that go into those, and those are in your footnotes to show what those assumptions are.
Those are legally required assumptions, correct?
Yeah, so the standards set in some cases, for instance, the other post-employment benefits liability, if you cannot fund it other than pay as you go, which in New York State is the only way you can do it as a local government, they require you to use a very specific discount rate. You have to use the long-term bond rate, and so they do limit what you can use. But yes, they're regulated, and the actuaries also determine those and use very standard rates.
It's important to note on the internal control matters after June 30th of 2020 that we have put in place a lot of policies and procedures. Financial statement audit readiness, we've already started working, Ina and her department has already started working on the next audit, which ends June 30th, 2021. And so some of the things that they are discussing that were not in place at June 30th, 2020 are now in place for this upcoming fiscal year audit. Also, as we were talking about OPEB, please everyone remember that the one thing that was mentioned, that OPEB number will go up again for the June 30th, 2021 because the discount rate. So when we come to present the June 30th, 2021, the OPEB number will be larger than what you see today.
Yes.
One more question. In terms of the management letter,
Well, in terms of the management letter, the city should do a corrective action plan and respond to those, and your city manager mentioned that some of those things are in the works already. But you are required in New York State, if a management letter is issued or if there are findings in the report, to create a corrective action plan and respond to that. So that would be the requirements.
So again, the council is responsible to respond to the management letter,
Yes.
which has been in the past, but has not necessarily happened.
I don't know that, but yeah. Yes.
No. Ina, do you have anything you want to add? If not, that would be the end of this presentation. Yeah. And Ina, you have to announce who you are, Ina, please.
Ina, come up
you
to
have
the mic.
Not as loud as I think I am.
Bless you.
Good evening. My name is Ina Raznik, for those that didn't meet me before COVID. I'm a city controller, and I worked with the audit team from Bonadia. My team worked with the audit team from Bonadia's, providing them with all the underlying financial data and substantiation, so they had staff to audit and issue their opinion. I really don't have anything to add. This is their show.
And we would say we do want to thank the city and all of their staff for all of their assistance during the audit. Like we said, it was a challenging year because of COVID, but they did a great job in getting us what we needed, so we appreciate that.
If there's no other council questions, thank you very much, and thank you for coming that long distance tonight. The next presenter, Joe Fabrizio, the Commissioner of Public Works. Would you like to step up and announce?
Oh, okay. I put this already.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Joe Fabrizio. I'm the Commissioner of Public Works. A few months back, we had input from concerned residents that we should provide more information on the city's drinking water. Our annual drinking water quality report was released on May 28, 2021, so we thought it was a good time to give an overview of the report, as well as information on some of the large capital projects that are being planned. There's essentially 4 large projects that we're working on right now. One is a new potable drinking water well. Well number 19 in Long Beach is what we're going to be calling it. Well number 16 has recently collapsed, so we are going to be building a replacement well, and H2M is the design firm that's going to be working on that. We're also designing a new 1.25 million gallon water storage tank. In the fall, we demolished a 1 million gallon tank, which was the standpipe, which was there for approximately 100 years, actually 120 years. Another project is enclosure of the open air basins at the water treatment plant, and rehabilitation of the sand filters. We asked Mr. James Deary of H2M to give a presentation on the annual water quality report and the large capital projects that their firm's working on. H2M is currently under contract with the city to design new drinking water well and enclosure of the open air basins at the water purification plant.
Bless you.
Mr. Neary is a Senior Vice President and Discipline Director of Water Resources at H2M Architects and Engineers. He has over 25 years of experience as a consultant in the field of water engineering. He holds extensive experience in construction, groundwater, aquifer assessments, water quality, and regulatory requirements. He's worked on a number of projects that have been monumental for the industry, including the NYC DEP Croton Water Filtration Plant, 300 million gallons per day dissolved air flotation plant, and Queens groundwater projects. He's a leader in the area of emerging water quality and regulatory issues. His dedication to protecting the environment through all of his practices helped make him a highly regarded member of the water professional community. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Environmental and Civil Engineering from Cornell University. He's a licensed professional engineer in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and Florida, and Hawaii. He's an active member of both the American Water Works Association and the Long Island Water Conference. I'm also joined by John Miranda, who's the former Commissioner of Public Works and the Fire Commissioner. I had the pleasure of working with John for 4 years, for 5 years actually, and he's also an expert and renowned in the water industry as well. And of course, we have Charles Bernowich, who is the Chief Plant Operator at the plant. Him and his staff of 8 highly trained operators do an excellent job to bring the city clean water on a daily basis. That being said, I just want to turn it over to Jim. James, sorry.
All right, good evening, everybody. How's the audio? I'll start by getting rid of the blush on my face from that bio. I have to talk to my marketing people about giving out my whole life story. Thank you, Council, for allowing me to speak with you, and hopefully I can just give you, in the short period of time I have, a snapshot of the condition of your current drinking water supply. Today we're going to talk about 3 things: emerging contaminants, and I'm going to start here, and you're going to hear this a couple times. They are non-detect in the city of Long Beach. Emerging contaminants are non-detect in the city of Long Beach water supply, and I'll tell you why I started there in a second. Then we're going to get into really the focus of tonight, the 2020 annual drinking water quality report, which was mentioned was delivered to homes in May. So we want to go through some of the highlights of that and talk about the general system health. And the last, just a little more detail on each of the capital projects that was brought around. Next slide. All right. The apologies to those in the room. The sun with this beautiful day is blocking the text, but essentially the purpose of this slide is to reassure the people of Long Beach, your drinking water supply does not have emerging contaminants. There is a tremendous amount of news out there right now, both in Nassau and Suffolk County, New York State in general, and I'm going to tell you the entire United States. Last year, the New York State Department of Health and New York State regulated 3 new contaminants, 1,4-dioxane and 2 perfluorinated compounds, PFOA and PFOS. There's lots of news out there. Newsday and other news sources are picking up a lot of information on there, and your neighbors across the bay, and so they do have these components. And frankly, it's been a real problem with the low levels of DTEX that these regulations are requiring. They are testing compounds to parts per trillion, a part per billion, 1,000 times more more concentrated, is one drop in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So they're testing down to parts per trillions now, and as you might suspect, as they test, they are finding this. The one compound, the perfluorinated compounds, and if you could read the slide, I make the point, they are ubiquitous. So the fact that the city of Long Beach is fortunate enough to not have these compounds detected is frankly a positive thing for the city of Long Beach, so they don't have to deal with the treatment. The treatment that many other suppliers are having to deal with is very expensive, and frankly, it's cutting-edge technology. New York is at the front edge of that. The compounds that they're testing for are starting to be detected and monitored in New Jersey and other places. Why am I making a big deal about this? Well, the point is that you can take away when you drink from your tap or use the water for bathing your children or whatever, that these compounds are not present in your supply. And that's an important thing because the news is omnipresent and quite alarming, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but for Long Beach standpoint, this is a huge advantage. Now, that's the good side. The bad side is the compounds that they are testing and the testing that is to come in the future is continuing to get lower and lower and lower. And specifically in the perfluorinated family, there are over 5,000 compounds that are being found all over the country in all different supplies. So right now, you're in a positive position. I just don't want anybody to turn back and say, oh, that engineer guy a couple of years ago, he said we should never have to worry about this. Today, you are non-detect. We're crossing fingers, eyes, toes, the whole deal, but we need to try and maintain that as long as we can because that's a huge capital and operation downside to the city should they happen to deal with that. All right, so no emerging contaminants in Long Beach right now. Next slide, please. All right, so just a little background for those of you that don't know the system. 35,000 customers, you know the demographics, whether seasonal or permanent. The treatment plant delivers just over 1 billion gallons of water per year. 1 billion gallons of water gets pumped out of your aquifer and sent to homes, some of it for irrigation, a good portion of it for drinking, flushing toilets, etc. The city itself has 55 miles of water main within its roads, and that water is generated from 8 production wells. What's unique about the city of Long Beach right now is your production wells are Lloyd wells. The Lloyd wells are highly regarded because they are the deepest wells in Long Island. There's a moratorium on new production from these, literally without significant lobbying and justification for their use. And those wells are considered to be pristine. Now, go back to my previous statement. There are some Lloyd wells on Long Island that do have emerging contaminants on it. So again, word of caution, I don't want people to feel that, oh, we've got Lloyd wells, we're all out of the woods. That's just something to be aware of. The one thing the Lloyd wells do bring are iron, manganese, and chlorides. The good news is these are naturally occurring items, so they're not man-made contaminants getting down deep into the ground. And the treatment plant does currently treat for the iron and manganese. So that's a good thing. One of the ways they treat for that is they add pH. They increase the pH. The way the city of Long Beach increases the pH is through the use of lime, calcium carbonate. That raises the pH and adds a goodly amount of hardness to your water. Not so much so that you get a tremendous amount of scaling, but what it does do is it protects the inside of the pipes, increases the pH, and also minimizes, and again, news cycles, pinholes. Because of that lime usage, we're definitely of the opinion the city of Long Beach water should not be overly prevalent pinhole leaks. And I think you've seen some of the news clipping on some other localities that have had that problem. All of the water, as I mentioned, is treated at the Park Place treatment plant, so the remote wells are brought back to that plant, and then they're treated for distribution. The final thing they do at the plant is they do add chlorine, and the chlorine is there for everybody's protection. Frankly, since September 11th, as the EPA and the state and federal governments have wanted to shore up homeland security, they've required a minimum amount of chlorine. I know some people don't find the taste so appealing, but trust me, it's there for your protection. It's there as a defense mechanism, and some of the systems that the city uses to monitor their water uses that chlorine as kind of a tracer to make sure that nothing malicious is happening to the water over time. When those of you that have ever had to use water for filling a pool or something, you have backflow prevention in your house, this is one of the reasons. Between the backflow prevention and the disinfection, that's our two-barrier approach to make sure that the distribution water that gets to your homes is safe for everybody's use. Okay. On this slide, the EPA, the Annual Water Quality Drinking Report. Many people don't know it shows up in your house. It's available via mail or email. It is federally mandated to be provided. So it's a required touch point between the water supplier and their consumers. It's available just both in mail and I can tell you most municipalities put it up on their website after the fact so that you can review it at leisure. There's a lot of verbiage in there. A good portion of that verbiage is actually federally and state mandated. We would love to wordsmith it and make it a little more easy to read, but they are prescriptive in some of their legal statements that have to be in there. At the heart of it is the sampling. In the middle of it, they talk about the water quality that the city puts out, both what's in the raw wells as well as the treated. And the summary as a takeaway is the iron and manganese is treated for at the plant. pH and chlorine are adjusted for disinfection and corrosion of plumbing fixtures. All right, next slide, please. Okay. In order to collect the data that we summarize in that report, the city collects over 5,000 tests in 2020 alone. 5,000 different water quality analyses that are taken from things such as pesticides, herbicides, volatile organic compounds, bacteriological, metals, as well as some of those emerging contaminants that I talked about. And those tests are not cheap and easy to perform, but they're actually taken to make sure that we can hold that non-detect status. Again, I mentioned some of the ones we have found, iron and manganese in the raw. I mentioned lead and copper here. Now, we take these tests specifically to identify if the pH of the water, the aggressiveness, the corrosivity of the water is a problem. Lead and copper is not in the source wells, does not exist there. The source of lead and copper that you will tend to see comes from homeowners' plumbings. Plumbing from pre-war, post-war times that could have lead and solder, all the way through new copper. New copper for people doing remodels, and I'm sure in this market right now there's a lot of people adding bathrooms, changing shower fixtures. That copper can leach if the water is not controlled through the use of the lime that we mentioned. So you'll see a greenish tinge to the water. These are kind of complaints we see when maybe the pH is not quite right. So good news, City of Long Beach uses lime to modify its pH and corrosivity to hopefully not have lead and copper. But we are required, or the city is required to take those samples to make sure that the pH is correct. Last one I want to talk about is chlorides real quick. Again, it's naturally occurring, but it is an area of concern because the chlorides can come from saltwater intrusion, and it is something the city is continuing to monitor and make sure that the potential for chloride intrusion can be better understood. All right, next slide, please. All right. There is another section in this. Again, not a tremendous issue for the city of Long Beach, but there is a mandatory language as well as something we would ask people to be aware of is conservation. For those of you who can see it, it's a sprinkler head with some lawn on the ground. bottom line, sprinkler usage jumps up in the summer. The people at the water plant and what do a lot of work in the summer to keep production up, not just for fire protection, not just for drinking and showering, but also to make sure that the lawns can stay nice and green. Obviously, we want to minimize that, be efficient. If you see leaking heads, et cetera, these are things as a community we need to be on top of and work with our neighbors to take control of. All right, next slide. All right, capital projects. As was discussed, there are a couple of capital projects going on right now. Again, apologies for the sunlight. Maybe we can look over my shoulder. Most of them are happening right here at the water treatment plant if you see the elevated tank. The first one I'd like to talk about is the basin covers. If you ever looked at Google Earth, you'll see that the water treatment plant has a number of basins in the middle of its process line that are uncovered. Several years again, post September 11th, Nassau County said, we would prefer that you not have those. After a number of different studies and initiatives and funding sources, we recently bid on the city's behalf the basin cover project, which incorporates a cover, almost like a tennis bubble cover, to keep seagulls, et cetera, from getting out, as well as the more malicious intent, although the plant is currently monitored, a more malicious act from occurring. That project is in evaluation of the bids right now, and hopefully will move forward in the short term. All right. Again, as was mentioned, well number 19. It's the first replacement well that the city has undertaken in almost 20 years. I'm proud to say that the last one, well number 18, was one of my projects 20 years ago, kind of dating myself. But this new project is a unique project because this will be the first well installed post-Sandy. And as you know from Sandy, Long Beach experienced a significant inundation from floodwaters. The regulations, the FEMA maps have all changed, and so the requirements for the well at this location are going to be slightly different. So we're in the process of completing the New York State DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation report, which is the precursor to asking for a replacement well permit to replace the lost well number 16. And then our teams will immediately go into the design of this building replacement, and hopefully, funding sources being available, well construction will begin in the fall, currently slated for. All right, next slide. All right, the elevated water storage tank. So what was in the picture here is a picture of the older standpipe, which I had a beautiful drone picture of it because, frankly, the tank had gotten into such bad condition because of corrosion. We live so close to the sea here. The ladders were in disrepair, and it was almost a problem to climb. So last fall, I think was mentioned, the tank was taken down, which is good, taken out of the asset inventory. And the city's consultant is currently working feasibility options for the multiple styles of tanks to replace it. Obviously, the drivers for that is corrosion and lifetime maintenance, as well as having adequate capacity. The new tank is slated to be 1.25 million gallons. Siting on that tank is slated to be approximately in the same location in and around the animal shelter and the existing Park Place plant. So right now you have one elevated tank, again the multi-leg that we call it behind me, as well as a ground storage tank on the Park Place tank. So you have some capacity today, but to provide full fire protection and available redundancy, this additional tank is being added to your inventory. All right, next slide. All right, actually, I take that back. I think that's the last of the capital projects. I thank the council for allowing us the opportunity to present, and the city's DPW group for working with us, and I'll take any questions from the council. Yep. So the tests fall into a number of different categories. There are tests that the water department has to do at the source, right after the well comes out, and your wells are spread out throughout the city. So the operators have to go to that and with proper protocols, collect those samples. There are other tests that occur at the treatment plant as processing is occurring to make sure the process is on target, as well as there's a certain percentage that happen in the distribution system. The Nassau County primarily regulates or reviews what they call their sampling locations. And so there are prescriptive locations throughout the city that the operators have to go and collect. And then most of those samples are taken and distributed directly to a New York State certified lab that has to legally report those samples both to the state, county, as well as back to the city. And I don't want to miss out, besides the 5,000 laboratory regulated tests, there are process control tests that are done more as a desktop to make sure that the operations are running smoothly at the plant and in the distribution system. So you have your own, they're non-binding tests or non-certified tests, but they still point to process controls and good checkpoints that the staff take care of. You're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Every so often we experience groundwater in Long Beach.
Brown water?
Groundwater.
Yep. Sure.
on the section. So do you think to address the safety of that water, or what causes it, what they should or shouldn't be concerned about?
So in general, the brown water that we see when it shows up is a function of iron. Now, as I mentioned, you have iron in your raw water, but there is treatment in place at the plant. So for the most part, that iron doesn't get to distribution. Far more likely what's happening is you've got older portions of unlined cast iron main, and over time it builds up like a layer. Tubercles is the term that we use, but it looks like little blisters. What tends to happen if fire department, I see we have some fire representatives here, if they're flushing or responding to a call, they will end up taking flow off a hydrant that has a higher than normal velocity. And as you can imagine, it kind of stirs up the things in the pipe. Now, that doesn't mean that we would love to see it all come out at their response, but it doesn't. So it ends up getting disturbed in distribution. And then unfortunately, 2.5 hours later, you go and do something, run your tub, and we will see that come out of the system. With all types of water quality issue, and I'm not looking to inundate the water department, but call the water department. They do responsive flushing to make sure that, if there's any, we call it slug of leftover, or frankly, knock on wood, if something should happen to process, the community can sometimes be the first eyes and ears of something going astray.
Do you have a question?
I think somebody's coming on mic.
Yeah. I'm Liz. In your experience with conservation, have you worked with our DPW on issues? Perhaps we could use gray water. This is for Joe, for John, for how we could
I'm not
you
familiar
look
with
for
the acronym.
conservation as a city. What steps we could take so when people water their lawn, they could use. It's called gray water, might not.
So, gray water is a tricky subject. So I will answer that. I worked in communities out west where they had gray water systems. There's a second pipe in the street. Works great for master planning. So if you've got 2 pipes in the street, which the city doesn't, I wish they did, because it would. Gray water also happens in larger buildings like this because you can segregate, not toilet flushing. That's sink and shower into that gray water. Residences are tough because, and especially from the standpoint I mentioned, backflow prevention. Gray water needs to be kept separate. And unfortunately, if you don't have correct plumbing controls, there's a high potential for gray water getting back into your potable system. And that would concern me. Not to say it couldn't be done, and there are citizens that do it effectively, but it is something to be monitored very carefully. I would strongly encourage the building department, the plumbing group, to work highly with the water group to make sure that didn't get out of control. Again, the benefit is there. What I might suggest that the city is interested is smart irrigation controllers tend to see significant paybacks because people tend to water almost as habit as opposed to when it's needed. The smart irrigation controllers today will talk to the weather stations and identify that we had rain last night, so we don't need to water today, and they will turn themselves off. That's probably the easiest and most effective way for the homeowner to understand their system. After that, maintaining your heads. I mean, how many people have driven down the road and seen that head just shooting up in the air? First off, we're not watering the lawn effectively, and second, that's an excessive waste of water. So just those small, simple things can make a big difference. Okay, that's right, yes. Right. Yep. So to recap for those that can hear on the air, what I was writing about is that we're currently working with the city to prepare a grant application for the replacement of water meters throughout the distribution system. Now, part of it is meters tend to underreport over time. So unfortunately, what you see is that you see lost water that is not revenue ability for the water department. But more importantly, the case that I've seen, depending on the meter level, is that the newer meters will actually talk back to operations control. And there's an anecdote out there where a homeowner filled up their pool, and the operations staff saw, hey, community member X was using a tremendous amount of water, called up and said, hey, do you have a leak? Is there a problem? Oh, no, I just filled up my pool. Sure enough, 3 weeks later, they saw the same use, called up the homeowner again, and she said, well, now I'm a little scared like his big brother out there, but at the end of the day, she had an algae problem. The pool company didn't get it clean. They dumped the pool and refilled it. So there are little flags that can be set off if water is being used 24 hours a day. You've got that low flow toilet that's running in the basement, or not the basement out here, sorry, running, but you don't know about it, or you've left that garden hose just a crack. The system will call up, and the water department could, if they want to elicit those flags, say, hey, you know, Mrs. Smith, something doesn't sound right. Oh, I found this leak, and that will also save countless thousands of gallons over the course of the operational year. Anybody else? Okay, again, thank you for allowing us to spend some time.
Thank you very much. Just emphasizing we have no contaminants in our water.
3 times.
Is that it for you, Joe?
That's it for us. Thank you very much, everyone.
Will they be around if any of the public has questions at the end of the meeting?
We'll be here for good and welfare if there's any questions, of course.
Okay, thank you. The next and the last presentation is from the Long Beach Housing Authority. It's Mr. Austin Graff.
Thank you, Council. I'm Austin Graff for the Long Beach Housing Authority. With me today is Mike Cruz, the Executive Director, Brett Dondy, Tenant Commissioner, Myra DeJesus, Tenant Commissioner, Natasha Nurse, Commissioner, Dan Fraser, a Commissioner, and Nathan Bonder, our consultant. I want to give a brief background about the Long Beach Housing Authority. The Housing Authority owns certain properties within Long Beach. Channel Park Homes has 108 units in the complex, approximately 500 residents. That was purchased by the Housing Authority in 1971. 415 National Boulevard has 66 units in the 6-story building. There are about 69 residents. That's senior housing. That was purchased by the Long Beach Housing Authority in 1973. There's 35 East Broadway, which has 66 units in the 6-story building, 69 residents, and it's a senior building, purchased by the Long Beach Housing Authority in 1972. There's 175 West Broadway that has 66 units in the 6-story building. There's approximately 70 residents. It's a senior building as well, and it was purchased by the Long Beach Housing Authority in 1973. Finally, there's 225 West Park Avenue, which has 72 units in the 5-story building. It has approximately 80 residents and is a senior building as well, and was purchased by the Long Beach Housing Authority in 1979. There's approximately 266 senior units in the Housing Authority, 108 public housing in Channel Park Homes, and 389 Section 8 vouchers. The Housing Authority has approximately 788 residents. The Long Beach Housing Authority is managed by a Board of Commissioners that consists of 7 board members. 5 board members are selected by the city manager. 2 board members are elected by the residents of the Housing Authority, 1 representing Channel Park Homes, and 1 representing senior housing. What is repositioning and how will it affect the residents? One of the reasons why we're here is to discuss, and there's been an issue within the Housing Authority, of the plan to reposition the Housing Authority. There are different programs that are run through HUD, the Housing and Urban Development. One is RAD, which is called Rental Assistance Demonstration. One is Section 18, and one is Streamlined Voluntary Conversion. What does repositioning mean? A unit is taken out of the federal public housing inventory and converted from public housing, Section 9, to Section 8, which are 2 sections of the federal code. What does it mean? What does repositioning mean? Repositioning by the Long Beach Housing Authority would convert the affordable housing unit to a project-based Section 8 program. It provides an opportunity to obtain the necessary financing for the authority to improve the units and improve the buildings that will ultimately improve the standard of living for the residents of the Long Beach Housing Authority. Repositioning would permit the Housing Authority to leverage public and private debt and equity in order to reinvest in the authority's property. Repositioning raises the reimbursement rates from HUD to increase the authority's income, enabling the authority to perform necessary repairs. How does the repositioning affect the residents? The tenants will not pay any additional money because of the conversion. Tenants' rent will be solely based upon their gross income and those of the family living in the rental unit. Tenant rent will remain at 30% of income. Even though the cost of the tenant will not increase, the residential units will be improved, including improvements to long-delayed repairs and renovations within the units in the buildings, because the Housing Authority will be able to receive a higher reimbursement rate from HUD and to obtain financing for long-term expensive projects. What happens if there's a vacancy after repositioning? If a tenant moves out of a residential unit, the replacement tenant must qualify for affordable housing under the New York State and HUD guidelines. The Housing Authority will continue to be an affordable housing agency. Any new tenant will be selected off of the authority's wait list that has been established for years. The senior buildings will continue to be for seniors only who qualify based upon their income and assets. Channel Park Homes will continue to be for single individuals and families who qualify based upon income and assets. What is the current legal relationship between the City of Long Beach and the Long Beach Housing Authority? Under New York Public Housing Law, Section 52.3, the Housing Authority does not pay any local municipal taxes. As a result, the Housing Authority does not pay any real property tax on its property to Nassau County or the city. However, in 1965, there was a cooperation agreement entered between the City of Long Beach and the Long Beach Housing Authority that requires the Housing Authority to pay annual payments in lieu of taxes, or a pilot, to the City of Long Beach in the amount of 10% of the rent roll. Under federal law, the Housing Authority deducts the cost of providing the residents electricity, gas, heat, and other utilities from the rent roll to determine the proper payment to the City of Long Beach, which is called the adjusted rent roll. In 2020, the Long Beach Housing Authority paid approximately $100,000 under the pilot to the City of Long Beach. In addition to the pilot, for the 225 West Park Avenue, the Housing Authority pays for sanitation services. The agreement to pay for sanitation services resulted from an agreement between the city and the Housing Authority as part of the Housing Authority's agreement to rehabilitate 225 West Park Avenue in the 1980s. However, looking through the city's files and through the Housing Authority's files, there is no formal agreement between the city and the authority regarding payment of sanitation services. As part of the conversion, what we're trying to do is trying to formalize and memorialize any agreements between the City of Long Beach and the Housing Authority. Under federal law, that's 42 U.S.C. Section 1437D, little d, the maximum amount the Housing Authority can pay in a pilot to the city is 10% of the adjusted rent roll. The Housing Authority also wants to memorialize the obligation to pay for sanitation services for 225 West Park Avenue. So what we want to do is, and we presented to the city manager, we want to talk about redoing the pilot so that there's more formalized documentation between the city and the Housing Authority, so anyone going in the future will know what everyone's rules and regulations are. And since we're at this point, it's a good time to do that. I thank you for giving us the opportunity to present, and if there's any questions from the council, I'm willing to take that this time. Sure. Yes, absolutely. That's what we want to do. We want to, the 10% is what we have. It's some random memorandum, but we want to sit down with the city manager, the council, and corporation council to put it in writing, have the city council approve it, have the Housing Authority approve it, and we can move forward. Yes.
You said your name was Austin Brett, but I don't know what your role is with the LBHA.
I'm the general counsel.
I went to the state several weeks ago to FOIL the information on the LBHA. They sent me to the City of Long Beach. I didn't bother the City of Long Beach because they're busy enough. So I'm asking you directly, because I couldn't find it on your website, for your articles of incorporation for the LBHA, your bylaws.
Mike, do you want me to?
Mr. Graff, I'd just like to, before I finish this, to close the loop, I'd like to know when the council can expect all this information by.
If I could say something on that, we sent the bylaws,
You didn't send it to my email address.
So what we have is we have all of the minutes. You should have received the email where you emailed us and said you had sent all these documentations, but the only thing we received was the minutes. And so Ms. Gina sent an email to you asking last week for the remaining of the items of the FOIL. Unfortunately, it took us a while to get to your response, but no, we don't have all of the documents we requested. Okay, I haven't seen it, but whatever we have, I will definitely share with the council. Right now I have the minutes, so what I will have to ask Gina about the other documentation.
And yeah,
It's unfortunate that you said that, because when I initially asked you for it, we had to FOIL it, even though that the council even though the city manager places people on that board. And so we went back, and then you asked for an extension to gather all of the information. So is it, you just said that any information you're willing to give us, or is it any information you're willing to give us as long as we FOIL it?
if I may.
Okay.
I think I pretty much covered
Yeah.
it, because, I mean, I'm a student of government, okay? So I'm going straight for the rules and regulations. I have no articles of incorporation for this organization. I have no idea the purpose or the intent based upon the law. And that's what I'm looking for. And so I'd still like to know when we're going to receive it.
If, to the extent that it hasn't been received, I will send it. Today is the 15th. By June 29th, you will have it. How should I send it to you? Through the city manager's office. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have some, sorry, I'm sitting back up here. For the conversion, what is the approval process? In other words, who approves it? Is it the commissioners?
It's the commissioners who approve it locally, but it has to be approved by HUD.
Okay, so it's a vote of the commissioners
Correct.
that does it. Okay, and then once it changes, it becomes a nonprofit entity, right?
No,
A
it'll-
501c3?
No, it'll always remain as the housing authority. The housing authority will continue to own the property and continue to manage the property. There may be a corporate middle entity, because there are certain rules with respect to HUD. There is a not-for-profit corporation that was formed, but we're working with legal counsel who works with HUD directly to structure the deal so that the housing authority board members are the board members in charge of the corporate entity that would control the conversion.
So all the current commissioners would become part of the new nonprofit management entity?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, then current. If someone drops off,
Right.
it would change.
And then
as well.
so as those people would drop off or be replaced, who would appoint them in the new management entity?
To the extent they're commissioners that are not tenant commissioners, the city manager would appoint them.
Okay, so it stays as
It
it
would
is
it would
now?
stay as is.
Okay, another question. The adjusted rent roll, the housing authority paid the city about $100,000 in 2020. Based on 374 units, that comes out to $267 per unit per year. So is the city, is what we're getting from, or what we're hearing from the Housing Authority, that adjusted rent on each unit in the city is only $2,600 a year?
You want to? Okay. Go ahead.
Wait, wait, sir, can you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry, my name is Nathan Bondar. I'm a consultant to the Housing Authority on the repositioning. So to answer your question, so the way it works is it's based on the rent roll, based on the income, based on the rent that's provided by the tenants. So the tenants pay 30% of the income, so it's 10% of the income that's provided by the tenants to the housing.
No, I understand that, but, so based
but
on...
the amount, but based on that amount, you are correct.
So based on that, a tenant pays $2,600 a year in rent?
Yeah.
A year?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. What else?
I have a lot of questions.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you.
No,
finish.
go ahead.
How many units are on? How many people are on with the waiting list? Can
Right now, we have over 800 on a low income, because we have two lists,
Right.
Section 8, low income.
So
Our
there's 800
senior,
people.
our seniors are close to 1,500.
1,500.
Yes.
You mentioned it's 30% of income. Is that net income or gross income?
It's gross income, yeah.
Does that income, gross income also include other sources of government?
Yes, they include any income that comes into the household. Right. So if they get public assistance, if they get unemployment, if there's additional income that comes in from other individuals in the household, all that is put together so that when we create that one number that's 30% of the total income in that household for that family.
Can I just go back to the RAD portion of this? A number of years ago, when I was sitting on the other side, there were a number of residents that came before that council, and they did not want this to happen. Has something changed? Because I have a list here of people that are against the private. Is this private?
There is a concern amongst tenants, which we would say is unfounded, but the concern is about change, is that because we are converting and modifying the program, that their residences are at risk. That's not true. Nothing will change with the tenancies. The only thing that will change is the structure of the Housing Authority, and also allow the Housing Authority to get private equity in mortgages in order to obtain additional funding so that we can improve the Housing Authority units.
So what would, for example, I have a family and I'm living here, and you're going to essentially renovate the apartment?
Depends upon the apartment. It may or may not need it.
Where am I going?
The
While you're
renovations are,
renovating.
at this point, the renovations that are needed in the units are not requiring any of the tenants to move out.
Okay.
So, a simple Google search reveals the pitfalls of RAD conversions that have already taken place. It's not clearly the utopia that was initially intended. How is the Housing Authority taking those lessons learned and making sure things that happened in places like Baltimore and other cities where people were evicted, where rents went up, where there was questionable ways lists were handled? You know as better than I do. What controls are going to be in place to ensure none of that happens here?
One thing that we have done is several of the commissioners have taken training and heard from HUD and other housing authorities that have had issues across the country. And with the guidance of our advisor and our consultant, we're taking into consideration all the different issues that happen across the country. Those issues happened earlier in the program as opposed to more recent times. And with the controls put on through the board and through the executive director, nothing is perfect. We're never going to get a perfect situation. But what we've been told by HUD is the Housing Authority system is broken and needs to be fixed, and this is one of the ways to fix it.
Okay. The new entity that's been set up, is there, other than the commissioners, are there people involved in it, I assume, from the, I guess I'll say, the private side of?
No. Right there, that entity was set up in the beginning portion of our conversion process. It is not part of the, it's part of the plan because it has to be part of the plan, but we're working with council who works with HUD to make it more of a pass-through situation where it's a corporate entity, but it has no independent life.
Okay.
And there is no other people other than the current commissioners.
So when the new structure is set up, let's say you were saying the current commissioners would migrate over. So the private component of the RAD, what is their tie-in then with that entity?
It's mostly contractual and a paper situation as opposed to an actual. The Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority, as appointed either by the city manager or by the elected by the tenants, will be in full control of the entire situation.
Okay, so it's not a board of developers?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Since there's no other questions, that ends the manager's report for tonight.
Thank you.
I have stuff to say.
Okay. Just before we move on, just one thing, and you don't have to get up again, Ms. Graff. Just I want to point out that we were given some petitions with people who opposed the RAD. Like you said, I guess there's concern of change. But one of the things that was included with the petitions was a letter stating that the residents were prevented from further getting petition signatures opposing the RAD. Obviously, it's not our purview. It's obviously the authority's purview, but I would suggest maybe a little bit more open process. If there are people saying that they're being told they can't get petition signatures, that's a problem.
We have every monthly meeting, we have a discussion on RAD, so we inform all of our residents that what the process is, how long it's going to take, whether it's even going to happen down the road, all depends on how we go through the process. So at no time have we told any of our residents that to sign a petition, and I've heard about this, and we've discussed it before, and I can tell you that the Long Beach Housing Authority is about trying to improve the quality of living for all its residents. And at no time would we ever tell our residents not to sign a petition. The issue is that they don't come to meetings, they don't understand the process, and that's where we're getting these petitions signed. But, they have a right to, they come to the meeting, we've discussed it over, let them know that it's not going to impact them in any way.
Well, I mean, one of the issues is you've been having Zoom meetings for quite some time, and for some of these seniors, that's an alien technology, so it hinders participation. And also, I guess I read one of your newsletters that discussed RAD, and I think I'm a pretty darn well-educated person, and even I was having difficulty understanding the explanations of the process. So, again,
Could Can you, I'm sorry, can you use the microphone,
Yeah,
please?
step up to the podium.
Actually, beginning Thursday, the housing authority is going back to meeting in person,
Yeah.
and we'll be meeting in different buildings over the next several months, so that the
Well, that's what I'm saying. The process I know has been going on during a period where communications are difficult because you're dealing with an audience that's not Zoom savvy or whatever you're using.
Correct.
And so you might be taking a couple of steps back when you go into live meetings now with
That's
filling
fine.
people, getting people up to speed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So,
So-
I'm sorry, so when is your next meeting?
Thursday
And do
at
you know what building?
225 Park Avenue.
At what time?
I think it's at 7? 7 o'clock.
May we attend?
It's open to the public.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Beno, I don't have a copy of the reports from the residents. That in my
Oh, it came in our packet.
what
Came in the
packet?
In the Friday
On
night
Friday,
packet.
the Friday packet.
I didn't have it in the packet. I have everything
Okay,
else.
we'll make you copies. Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so
Just,
all done? All right, I guess we could move on to the...
wait, let me just make some quick
Oh, wait,
announcements.
sorry.
Sorry.
Councilwoman Treston has some stuff to add.
I know that this has been already a lengthy meeting, but we had a really busy week, and I'd just like to, can I be heard? Anyone complaining on COA? Thank you. Mike is tonight there is a, yes, please.
Tonight, there's a Boy Scout Troop 215 Award Merit Badge and Rank Advancement Ceremony. We're here. We couldn't be, one of us could not attend that, but we did submit proclamations for their achievement, their dedication, their commitment to reach the highest ideals of character, conduct, and patriotism. The names are Scarlett Anderson, Angeli Ayala, L. Matthews, Connie Mayers, Alexis Recoy, Catherine Troy, Mia Miller Weiss, Connor Arts, Liam Bowles, Van Seniceros, Sean Capret, Alex Krasminski, and forgive me if I mispronounced your name, Will Kenahan, Zachary Paggi, Joey Ricoy, and Noah Webster. Thank you.
And just a couple of quick notes. I wanted to thank President Council President John Bendo for doing his announcements at Flag Day yesterday. It was very well received. And the suffragette movement, there's going to be a plaque on National that will be installed, Tommy, permanently in the near future. And we were at a renaming of a shul on Long Beach Road for Rabbi Waxlack on Sunday, and it was just quite a moving ceremony. I'd also like to remind residents that our oyster catchers, please do not feed them. They love the ocean food. They do not require your cans of tuna. They do not require you to feed them your leftover chicken sandwich. We are working with the Town of Hempstead biologist, and we will be banding, not banning, but banding the oyster catchers in the next couple of weeks. And that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bendo.
Okay, let's move on to the agenda.
Okay, on to the regular calendar. Item 1 is approval of minutes from prior meetings, April 20th and May 4th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
Item 2 is a resolution establishing a standard workday for elected members of the City Council of the City of Long Beach for purposes of determining and reporting days worked for the New York State Local Employees Retirement System.
Okay, is anyone speaking on it? Rich, is that you? Or Dave?
It's pretty much, it's a housekeeping item. Because Mr. Delury is also a public employee and a member of the retirement system, they require that we keep track, put a amount in for his time accrued into the retirement system.
Okay, any questions from the council? Nope. Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none.
Item 3. Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an addendum agreement, into addendum agreements with the East End Atlantic Beach Fire District and the Atlantic Beach Fire District.
And this one is me. Good evening, members of the council. Good evening to the public. Rich Barrios. So, as the resolution indicates, we have 2 separate agreements with 2 separate fire districts outside city limits, one with East End Atlantic Beach Fire District and one with the Atlantic Beach Fire District. We entered into those agreements about a year ago, respectively. What this resolution does is formalizes a historical practice between the city and the volunteer fire department. The department basically provides these services outside of the city limits, and the general municipal law provides that we can enter into these contracts with the consent of the volunteer fire department. That consent can then be, that comes with consideration. So essentially what each of these addendums do, we've reached out to each fire district just to verify. We sat down with the volunteer fire department and came up with a fee of 24% of shared revenue for each agreement. That's for every, all the annual proceeds from those agreements go to the volunteer fire department. As far as the past practice, this goes back to the 80s. This is something we've been doing since at least the 80s, sharing revenue for contracts for fire services outside of the city of Long Beach. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Yeah, so that 24%, is that allocated some? Does it go for equipment purchases, or is it to use like for the allocation, I'm sorry, the induction ceremony and things like that?
Right, my understanding is that it is, but I don't want to speak for the volunteer fire department. I know that this is, this is purely a revenue share.
No, I get that, but I just trying to figure out what it's used for.
Right. I think
To President Becker's point, I guess, are there any restrictions on the funds that we remit to the fire?
Good evening, Scott Kemmons, speaking as a proud 41-year member of the Long Beach Fire Department and an ex-chief. As learned counsel mentioned, this practice has been going back to the 80s. I can provide a letter if anybody, the council want to see it, an agreement from then City Manager Edwin Eaton and the Long Beach Volunteer Fire Department for the revenue sharing. This letter dates back to 1987, institutionalizing the sharing of the East Atlantic Beach contract. In answer to Council President Bendo's question, the funds that the Volunteer Fire Department receives, one, the Volunteer Fire Department is a 501c3 corporation dating back to 1910 is when we became incorporated. So there are limitations on what we can spend money on in those regulations. I can give you a snapshot of some of the expenses that we use the money for. One, we fund our own death benefit, life insurance for our members. The installation and awards dinner is paid for by that money. We're one of the few fire departments that pay for its own dinner. The majority of fire departments' dinners are paid by either the villages or their fire districts. So that money, a majority, 90% of the money that we get from the city goes to the installation dinner alone. It pays for our holiday party. for awards we give out to our members. Recreational teams, whether softball, bowling, throughout the years. We do pay for additional training that the city funds are limited for training. We send our members to conferences for training, to classes for training. That's paid for by the volunteer fire department. We supply our members food at drill on Sunday mornings or on Wednesday evenings. We do supply food to our members for our meetings. We also participate in parade and drills throughout the county, throughout the year. We pay for the band when we march, and that is a snapshot of our expenses that this money goes to.
Okay.
I could remind you that 67% of the firefighters in the United States are volunteers. And the volunteer fire department, at an estimate, saves the residents of the city of Long Beach anywhere between $7.5 and $10 million if you needed a fully paid fire department. So,
I would just ask, Treasurer Kevin says, I pulled the Form 990, which is the IRS tax return for the Long Beach Volunteer Fire Department. I'm looking at your financials with the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. I would just ask that it would be clearer as to where the revenue comes from the city, because it says, right now it says your revenue came from fundraising events or government grants. So to me, that's not really clear. And then, the intent of the money from the city is to go to training.
right, we can talk to our accountant who files our taxes for us. We do file taxes yearly and make that more clear.
Okay, and then the fund balance in the Long Beach Fire Department as of 6/30/2019 was $939,122. I expect that has gone down tremendously in the past year because of COVID, but I'm glad to see that you have a healthy fund balance.
A lot of that is our death benefit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I just have one.
Scott, I have one question too. Go ahead.
Ladies first.
Well, I met you earlier today. You explained, but just in case someone one of our residents have a question about the 24% and where it goes, and maybe Ina might be able to answer this as well, into the city's budget.
All the revenues from those two fire contracts, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ina, go into the general fund as income. And then that's part of the revenue that the city makes their budget on for all the departments. The fire department doesn't get 100% of the funds taken in. It's just put into the general fund.
Thank you.
Did you ask Enid to come up, Liz? Because I just want to ask one question to the commissioner before. How many members do you have approximately?
We approximately have 134 members as of last week when I ran the roster.
And on a different note, I was, this past Sunday, there was a training drill with the Nassau County Police and the Volunteer Fire Department, which landed on Lindell School Field. And I talked to one or two of the members there just to understand the process, because if there is a real emergency that a person has to be transported, with the traffic at ground level and the urgency of the matter, having a drill like this is very important. And I was happy to see that.
Yeah, we typically do a helicopter drill once a year with Nassau County Police. Sometimes we have the Coast Guard and New York City. As we are an island, and depending on traffic and the type of injury, if you have a pediatric trauma, the closest pediatric trauma center to us is Cones Children's Hospital in Lake Success. So it would be a 45-minute ride in traffic and an 8-minute ride by helicopter.
Right.
So that's why we train, and we're taught how to load the patient into the helicopter, and if need be, one of our paramedics can go with the patient in the helicopter.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner.
Scott, just one more question. The 24%, is it just what Atlantic Beach and East End Atlantic Beach pass, or is that also 24% of any ambulance charges?
No, it's just 24% of the two fire...
Of what the two fire districts pay us?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone else?
I thought Mike did.
You had a question as far as where the revenue...
Well, no, it's
or
that
the-
answered it. It goes into the general fund.
Got it?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, any questions from the public?
Oh.
Mr. Gusler?
Good evening, Jay Gusler. Been a long time. Couple of questions. Why are we making this change? Why are we making it now? What is the dollar figure involved? It should be a relatively straightforward calculation, unless I missed it. Was there a dollar figure disclosed?
It would just be 24% of the annual income, right? So I'm not going to crunch the number, but I know Ina has done this for us already. So there is a number.
Okay.
And what was the second question, Jay?
Well, I'm not done. Let me hit you with all of them, and maybe we'll address them as best as you can. The other consideration, I mean, these are known contracts. If you apply 24% to the value of those contracts, you should be able to come up with a number. This also entails the East Atlantic Beach contract, which is, the majority of those calls are covered by the paid firefighters as opposed to the volunteers. So how are we going to make that, how are we going to reconcile that? The other issue I'm taking is the decades-long practice. No, I would submit that the council request some proof regarding that. I've been involved with the department myself directly as an employee for many years, and I've followed city government and affairs for still longer, and I can tell you this, that I'm aware of a couple instances over the decades when the city did give the volunteers money, usually earmarked for something specific like their installation dinner, but otherwise I'm recommending that the council ask to see a budget line from past budgets that would establish that this is indeed a past practice. The other thing that I have is, if you read the law, it simply allocates the money for the use and benefit of the fire department. As Councilwoman McInnes pointed out, there's been no demonstration of need. These guys are sitting on a big pile of money. Their exempt organization is sitting on, I think, $2.3 million in liquid cash right now. So I really don't see where the beleaguered taxpayers of Long Beach need to have their funds raided, if you will, for an organization that just doesn't need the money. Not complaining about the work that they do, nothing against them, but we all pay taxes here. It's bad enough that the taxpayers that are the recipients of services under these contracts are getting at a bargain rate. Now we're going to turn around and give part of that money away to somebody else. Doesn't seem fair to me. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Sure.
I think I need to make some corrective statements here. This has been a practice, as I showed you, going back to at least 1987. That's when then City Manager Edwin Eaton codified it. The Volunteer Fire Department submits a claim voucher to the city twice a year for 50% of that money based upon that letter, and it has been paid up until 2020, twice a year. So it's nothing new, and it's been ongoing. Mr. Gusler mentioned the Exempt Firemen's Benevolent Association, which is a totally separate and not part of the Volunteer Fire Department. That is funded through funds called 2% funds given through the state of New York from insurance proceeds. The Volunteer Fire Department does not get...
Can you just repeat that number from the exempt fire what?
2% funds. Those are from proceeds from insurance money that is given to the state. The Volunteer Fire Department has nothing to do with the exempt organization, and they vice versa. Members of the Volunteer Fire Department can join the exempts, but it's separate and has nothing to do. Many members of the exempts have nothing to do with the fire department any longer. Thank you.
I guess, Rich, one final question for you. So we heard that this was a 50-50 split with the east end.
Right.
Now we're going to a 24 for both. How
Right.
does that, does it come out to the same amount, or?
It puts them roughly in the same position they were in, so it's not like we're adding anything else to the equation here.
Or taking away.
Or taking away for that matter.
What's important to note about this is that what we're doing is that if for any reason city management changes, the comptroller changes, and corporation council changes, this is now in writing so that it would move forward from this point on, that we don't have to look back at just old documents that does not explain everything, and we don't have to depend on hearsay, verbal agreements.
Right, that's exactly right, Ms. Gaten. And essentially, once these contracts run their course, the parties would get back to the table should we renew, and we discuss whatever the percentage is then.
Okay, any other? Okay, let's move on to item 4.
Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter, enter into an agreement for the rental and installation of air conditioning equipment for City Hall.
Which we are benefiting from right now. Yeah, you said you were going to do it.
Good evening, everyone. Joe Fabrizio again, Commissioner of Public Works. This item is for the rental and installation of air conditioning equipment for City Hall. Last Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we had absolutely no AC in the building, and I could testify to the fact that it was about 95 degrees in my office, and it was pretty unbearable. So basically, the equipment that we're renting here is a 200-ton air chiller and 500-watt kW generator from Granger off GSA contract. The rental is from Friday, June 9th to Friday, July 9th, 2021. So it's a 1 month or 4 week rental. The price is $68,536.16. The original resolution was for $41,693.08 for 2 weeks. Based on the information provided by carrier, however, the part is being shipped on June 17th, excuse me, delivered on June 22nd, and it's going to be installed by carrier on or about June 29th. So since this was extremely tight schedule, we thought it was better to be safe than sorry and extend the rental from 2 to 4 weeks. Part, just for your information, that we're waiting on, it's not just a fuse or something like that, it's $98,839. That's the part that we're waiting on right now. It's a custom part that no longer is available, and has to be specifically fabricated for this existing unit. Just for your information, too, the part was actually ordered on April 27, 2021, for your information. And it's being shipped from, I don't know if I have this right, it's Mequon, M-E-Q-U-O-N, Wisconsin. That's where it's coming from. I was asked about the cost of the units that the city rented in 2019. We had rented back in 2019, it was a 60-ton unit for the police and fire department, and it cost about $35,000. But that unit was only providing air for about 10,000 square feet. This one is providing air for about 60,000 square feet, which is the whole building. And again, it's a 200-ton unit as opposed to a 60-ton unit. And that's pretty much it. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, how old is our AC system in this building? Is it the original system?
The chiller itself is about 15 years old.
15.
What we're doing now is the part that we're waiting for, the $98,000 part, is essentially like the whole innards of it, so to speak, though, the guts of the system, the controls of the system that's going to be replaced. Again, unfortunately, it's not coming till the end of the month.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, we've had AC problems in this building every summer for a while now. I mean,
Correct.
are we trying to fix an Etzel here, or?
I mean, it may be something that we do a complete overhaul, but we just did that for the police and fire department. We had the same issue last year, and that was was a very expensive job. So yeah, it's probably something that we should look into and put in possibly the next capital budget.
Okay.
So doing this now, I recall that City Hall had to be closed a number of days because of excessive heat and the broken air conditioner. God bless you.
Yeah, in this case, we didn't close. The city manager was kind enough to allow us to close, I think, an hour early or 2 hours early.
But we were
possibly.
closed.
2 hours, sorry.
This was,
Sorry.
This was
Thank you.
before But
I
at one
appreciate it.
time.
Thank you.
I know that in David's office, it must have been 110 degrees. That,
Yeah.
not now, but a couple of years ago, that you had to be sent home. Isn't that's an OSHA issue, no? Mr. Barrios?
That may be a question for Richard.
So OSHA has, I guess, no hard and fast rule. They have like recommended temperature ranges, and the recommended temperature range is anywhere between 68 and 78 degrees tops. Temperatures in City Hall were at 85 up to 95 at that point.
Yeah, we're all benefiting from that temporary system right now.
Well,
Correct. Commissioner, I just have one. How is the units working in the police department that were done last year?
To my knowledge, everything's running fine.
Okay.
There's no issues.
No issues. Thank you.
We got a thumbs up from COA.
That's where we have to go to stay cool.
All right, any more questions from the council members? Seeing none, any from, oh, wait.
We have I believe we have an amendment to,
Yes.
I'd just like to make a motion to change the following, the wording for a period of 2 weeks at a total cost of $41,693.08 in both the fourth whereas clause and the second resolve clause. Please change that to for a period of 4 weeks at a total of $68,536.16, please.
do I have a second?
I'll second.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
Okay, continue.
Okay, any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, let's move on to item 5.
Okay. Item 5 is a resolution authorizing publication for hearing of a local law amending the charter of the City of Long Beach. This item is for publication only. A hearing will be held July 6th at 7 p.m. Item 6 is a resolution authorizing publication for hearing of an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Long Beach. This item is for publication only. A hearing will be held July 6th at 7 p.m. Item 7 is a resolution authorizing publication for hearing of an ordinance authorizing financing for various capital projects in and for the city, stating the estimated total cost thereof of $13,967,752, appropriating said amount therefore, including the expenditure of $3,881,252 expected to be received in state or federal aid, and $350,000 proceeds of previous borrowings, and authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $9,736,500 bonds of said city to finance said appropriation, and further authorizing any amounts received from the United States of America and/or the state of New York to be expended towards the cost of certain of such capital projects as indicated herein, or redemption of any notes and bonds issued therefore, or to be budgeted as an offset to the taxes for payment of the principal of and interest on said notes and bonds.
I'm sorry, I phased out.
Yeah, when we go to the voting section, I'll read it again. This item is a publication only. The hearing will be held July 6th at 7 p.m. And finally, item 8 is a resolution authorizing publication for hearing of an ordinance authorizing financing for the cost of fiscal year 21-22 separation payments to or for the benefit of employees of the city upon separation from employment, stating the estimated total cost thereof of $3,229,500, appropriating said amount therefore, and authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $3,229,500 bonds of said city to finance said appropriation. This item is a publication only. A hearing will be held July 6th at 7 p.m. On to the voting portion. Item 2 is a resolution establishing a standard workday for the elected members of the City Council of the City of Long Beach for purposes of determining and reporting days worked to the New York State Local Employees Retirement System. Who will introduce and move the adoption of this item?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting. Councilmember Delory. Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
Item 3 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into addendum agreements with the East End Atlantic Beach Fire District and the Atlantic Beach Fire District. Will introduce and move the adoption of this item.
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting. Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
I just want to take the opportunity to thank all of our first responders, professional and volunteer, for all the work they do in their service. I'm not running out of my house to fight a fire. You are, so thank you, both professional and volunteer. I vote yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
Item 4 is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement for the rental and installation of air conditioning equipment for City Hall. Who will introduce and move the adoption of this item as amended?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
Item 5 is a resolution authorizing publication for hearing of a local law amending the charter of the City of Long Beach. Who will introduce and move the adoption of this item?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
Item 6 is a resolution authorizing publication for hearing of an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Long Beach. Who will introduce and move the adoption of this item?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Before I vote, just, this is the charter stuff, correct? For
publication.
public, when people are reading this, that they understand that the italicized part is being removed.
Yes, and the items
Okay.
that are in italics are being
Because
removed.
it's pretty thick, and if you have a copy, or if you read it online, that you understand exactly what you're reading. So, I'm voting yes.
Okay. Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
Just as you wanted. I'm
Good
reading it
luck
again.
with this.
Okay, item 7 is a resolution authorizing publication for hearing of an ordinance authorizing financing for various capital projects in and for the city stating, excuse me, estimated total cost thereof of $13,967,752, appropriating said amount therefore, including the expenditure of $3,881,252, expected to be received in state or federal aid, and $350,000 proceeds of previous borrowings, and authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $9,736,500 bonds of said city to finance said appropriation, and further authorizing any amounts received from the United States of America and/or the state of New York to be expended towards the cost of certain such capital projects as indicated herein, or redemption of any notes and bonds issued therefore, or to be budgeted as an offset to the taxes for payment of principal of and interest on said bonds and said notes and bonds. Would you just move the adoption of this item?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
I just want to first say that I would like, as the council, to start seeing some quarterly cash flow projections related to spending and bond issuances. With that, I vote yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
And finally, item 8 is a resolution authorizing publication for hearing of an ordinance authorizing financing for the cost of fiscal year 2021-22 separation payments to or for the benefit of employees of the city upon separation from employment, stating the estimated total cost thereof is $3,229,500, appropriating said amount therefore, and authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $3,229,500 bonds of said city to finance said appropriation. Will introduce and move the adoption of this item?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
As you can tell, this is authorization for a public hearing for July 6th, and therefore I vote yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes.
City Manager's monthly personnel report has been filed by the city clerk. Who will make a motion to close the meeting?
I will.
Second?
I will.
Voting, Councilmember Delory.
Yes.
Councilmember Mandel.
Yes.
Councilmember Treston.
Yes.
Vice President McGinnis.
Yes.
President Bendo.
Yes. Okay. Going to go on to good and welfare as we get the magic box here. So 3 minutes.
Huh? Yeah. Donna, can you remind people what recycling is tomorrow?
Okay. Yeah, start from the bottom. All right, and our first person of the evening is Dan Frazier. Okay. William Depper.
Good evening.
It's so nice to see you, Mr. Depper.
Thank
No
you.
mask.
I actually had a few questions about the Long Beach Housing Authority as I got up and I walked, because you didn't ask us if we had any. But HOPWA, and my crews didn't know anything about this, HOPWA is Housing Opportunity for People with AIDS. Do they ever purchase any houses in here or in the Long Beach area, you know, or the surrounding areas, or options for community living? Because they also have a housing program, and they're all over the island, both Nassau and Suffolk County. Another thing, to the water guy, the fountain outside, is that recycled water, or is that like when you buy the fountains and plug them in, the water just continuously goes, or is that like everyday water that's being used?
Commissioner?
Joe, the question was the fountain out front. It's just like a pool type, but it's a closed system, right?
It's not new.
No, but it's a closed
water.
system. It's just taking the water in the fountain and just spraying it, and it's...
Oh, it is recirculating?
Right, it's just
Okay.
recirculating the water.
Then also the slides that we couldn't see because of the glare, is anything going to possibly be done to maybe put a curtain up so we could view it better?
Actually,
You know,
I was
especially in
mumbling
the-
to the city manager. I was talking, we need to move the screen from that side of the room to that side of the room.
Yes, because it was horrible. We couldn't read it.
Yeah, we're looking to put one above.
The
But I think
housing...
They're all on they're all posted on all the...
So,
Yep.
so the presentations are posted on
Yeah.
on the website now. So if you go to the city website where the agenda for the city council meeting is, the presentations are there.
All three of
Okay,
them-
they
all three of them
there.
are up there.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And just quick, in regard to your first question about the housing authority, since they left, they just said they're having a meeting Thursday evening that's
Yeah,
open
but
to the
then he
public.
says, I don't get asked to go because I'm not in their senior program, I'm on the other program.
No, but what I'm saying is the meeting is open to the public, so you can go. It's open to all.
Yeah, I didn't even know about it, and I'm on their
Yeah.
site.
Neither did we.
They don't advertise it at all. You
We
know,
didn't know about it
see?
either, but now you know.
Yeah, all right, that's really all I have to say. I just want to thank you very much for letting me have the testing event on National HIV Testing Day, which is June 27th. I know it's a Sunday, and I know I kind of like was here earlier, but the guy from AHF Pharmacy, which is the AIDS Healthcare Foundation Pharmacy, said that Kerry never got back to him to let him know that we were good to go. So I have the flyers. I actually
I saw it posted.
have a pin from Miss Gaden because I did see the red ribbon behind you when we were doing it virtual. I didn't know if that was for heart or for AIDS, but I brought you a survivor pin that you could wear, or any one of you, and I have some on order to bring to give out on June 27th.
Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
heart behind
Thank
me
you.
that you see behind me on the virtual is for breast cancer. The ribbon is
Isn't
for-
pink
is for-
usually breast
yes,
cancer?
They're pink. Maybe
It
they
looked
come-
red.
No, they're pink.
Oh, it's pink?
Yes,
Okay.
but thank you.
Okay, Jason Massey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Can you just
Thank you for
provide your name and
My name is Jason Massey.
from?
I've been a resident of Long Beach for all my 46 years. I'm here to formally request the renaming of a street here in Long Beach. I have a prepared statement if you allow me to read. We, the KMD MF Doom Committee, request that the East Hudson Street block between Riverside Boulevard and Long Beach be named KMD MF Doom Way to commemorate one of our city's greatest cultural legacy contributors as indicated in our petition, KMD MF Doom Way, renaming the street. The City Council received this letter electronically stating this request on February 22nd, 2021. The symbols and markers of our neighborhood provide a sense of collective cultural memory. Nearly 10,000 people have signed this petition to name the street KMD/MF Doom Way in Long Beach, New York. Daniel Dumile, the artist known as MF Doom, had a version of hip-hop that represents some of the culture's best linguistic metaphors, garnering international and interracial admiration. His life and art symbolize the resilience we need in our present context. Over the last few years, the world witnessed a global pandemic and a re-energized movement for racial equity and symbolism. Amid this transformation, the hip-hop community, the heirs of our past civil rights generation, continue reevaluating their legacies and memories. The KMD MF Doom Way street naming movement is a part of this new tradition. Dumoulin life serves as an example of inclusive community building and growth through individual struggle. His career began in Long Beach, New York in the late 1980s. Dumoulin formed the group KMD, Cause of Much Damage, which means a positive cause in a much damaged society, under his stage name Zevlug Vex, along with his brother Dingalizwe DJ Sub-Rock Dumoulin and others of the Long Beach youth. He experienced early success. After a tragic car accident took the life of his brother DJ Sub-Rock in 1993, and a disagreement with his label ended their relationship shortly after, Doom disappeared into obscurity. He battled homelessness and feelings of abandonment. However, like a prophet who finds their true self in the desert, Dumoulin called on his youthful experience in Long Beach and reemerged as MF Doom. Dumoulin took his pain and experience as youth to develop the persona. He incorporated cartoons, Marvel comics, food, and sounds of his younger self in an incubation process. His album, Operation Doomsday, which was released in 1999, will become an instant classic. Other albums and collaborations followed with even greater fanfare, solidified Dumoulin as a hip-hop icon. He is credited with some of the most intricate uses of the English language on wax. He is an avid, he is an avid skateboarder who developed interracial coalitions across the city. Doom combined this generation's sound with his skateboarding pastime to bring young people across differences into intimate spaces. This is his real legacy. As a hip-hop artist, he continued that tradition. His concerts were some of the most diverse in the industry.
Sir, your time is up. Can you please wrap it up in a sentence or two?
20 seconds. It is a gift Long Beach residents should be proud to call their own. Long Beach should honor their native son and his legacy on a street sign, please. The city should embrace the broader implications of unity and artistry Dumoulin represents, which was true of hip-hop from the beginning. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just so you know, we just were, sorry we didn't get back to you in February, but we were just talking about this yesterday. So you will hear from us because we're trying to find out about the street naming or make it an honorary street, all the legalities to go to it. So I didn't want you to think we forgot about you.
Okay, thanks.
It's just taken us a while to get through everything we had to do. So you should be hearing something from us next week.
Thank you.
And then we'll bring it to the council at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Roy Lester.
That was a great presentation. Really, I'm glad you didn't cut him off at the 3 minutes. I just have a bunch of questions. Listen, if you don't have the answers to them, just, if we can do it next week or something. Again, I'm asking that the public be allowed to ask questions during the presentation, after the presentations. The people aren't here, and to ask, to use good and well for your 3 minutes to ask on 3 different topics, it just isn't right. And also, if we can get the additions to the presentations put out at the same time that the agenda is put out. I downloaded the agenda. I didn't know that there were additions, I think they would just put out today, I'm not sure, but it would be great. Also on the audit, last year's audit was 90 pages. This presentation, I think, was 4 pages. Usually the audits come out in April or May. Do you know when we'll get that audit? The long one, the big one?
It should be on
You know what, Don, please wait, because I'll be cut off, so.
No, you won't.
Okay.
We hold your time. You'll see it within the next couple of days on the website.
Okay, great. Okay.
She said it's already on the website.
Yeah, it's already.
I checked before I came here. It wasn't here on the website.
Okay.
So, I wouldn't ask otherwise. And if we can do something about the opening of bids, it's really kind of a waste of time. I watched the other day for the opening of bids for the bicycle rentals, and I watched for 1 minute and 37 seconds as someone opened an envelope, and that was it. That was it. They opened an envelope. I don't need to see someone opening an envelope. If we could tell a little bit about the bid, it would be great. Anyway, my main question has to do with, on April 14th, we entered into a contract with M3, a $750,000 contract, and it was retroactive to March 1st. It expired on May 31st, so theoretically we don't have a contract. The arrangement gave us a discounted rate of between $395 and $1,225 an hour, and subject to the cap of $250,000 a month. It says that, it said it was a discounted rate, that they normally, it's way over the $750,000 that they were going to get. So I don't know what's going on, if we've entered into a new agreement or anything like that. They were supposed to do 10 different services, 13-week cash flow and all sorts of other stuff that I don't know if they've done it or not. I haven't seen it. I've been looking for it. But they said that it was the desire of M3 and the client that the services be completed within the 90 days, so they would have been completed. It was the desire that it be completed by the May 31st date, and I don't think it was. I don't know. But, my questions are, did we enter into a new contract with them already? Did the discounted rate apply to the new contract? What work was done under the service agreement, and what's the status of collecting the money from the state? Because, they're supposed to be paying, hopefully they're paying for it. But there was also some language that I was curious about that said, no state or federal funds will be specifically directed by the state or federal government to make any payments to M3, i.e., M3 will be paid from the client's general fund and not by any other source in connection with this engagement. I'm wondering how that affects us. So, like I say, Donna, it's a lot of questions.
Well, I can answer a couple of them.
Okay.
There will be a presentation in the month of July from M3 in O'Melveny. They have done quite a bit of work. We have been going back and forth, looking at everything, cash flows, along with CMA. M3, there is no new contract. They have been working with us. The $750,000, that's what it was capped at. They want to see this through. And we will have a meeting with the attorneys on Thursday to go over where we are. So we have been working very hard. We just have not come forth with what we're working on, and a presentation will be sometime in the month of July.
But the 750, even though they continue the work, because
we're going to work that out, but I did make the state aware of it. We will work it out. We have not had an agreement because M3, the owner of M3 said he wanted to see this finish, and he was not going to gouge us, and he was not going to penny pinch us because this is a big project. He's invested in this project.
Holding you to that.
I'm sorry?
I'm holding you to that.
Well, this is a good firm.
Okay.
I did talk to the state. Because of the money that the federal government has given all of the states and the municipalities, like where we're supposed to receive $3.6 million, they put to the side all of the work for the FRB, but we should be hearing something in July.
Okay. Have we paid them yet? Anything? Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Lester. Just describe your bid process, what you heard, what you saw.
The what?
Your
The bid
process that you said that the bicycle.
You got to see this online.
I just want.
I'll tell you exactly what it was like. 2 women were sitting there, and for the first 30 seconds, nothing. This was a total of 1 minute and 37 seconds. Then they introduced themselves. They took an envelope. They said, "We received 1 bid." And they opened the envelope, and they said, "This is the bid." And that was the end of the opening, the bid opening.
So
I watched someone open an envelope.
They should announce the name.
Excuse me?
They should announce the name of the bidder.
They did, but I didn't catch it. It wasn't anybody that we had Deco Bike at one point. We had different bike places. I just was surprised at 1 bid, given the number of bike rental places there are now.
So you could hear their name, but you couldn't hear anything else. Was it an audio problem? Or?
No, it wasn't that. There was nothing, we received 1 bid. I don't even remember, if they did say the name. We received 1 bid, and that was the end of the hearing.
Okay.
I watched them open an envelope.
No. I've looked at other bids, and I didn't have the same experience that you just described, so.
But watch this one.
So the purpose of putting it on YouTube,
Yeah.
what the city has done in the past is that they have had bids, opened the bids, and they were not done in public.
Yeah.
And so when I noticed that, I said, you have to at least open them and record it on YouTube. So no one can say that we were doing as a city with anything with the bids. So maybe their presentation is off, but it's transparency. And so now that we're fully open, that when a bid is due, they will come to this chamber and they will open the bids, and there will be people here so that people can see that we're not letting people come in early. They're not coming in after the bid is open. That is the reason. That was the only bid that was received, and that's why it was so short. So I apologize for maybe their presentation, but it's for transparency's sake.
So it's just to make sure that there's nothing in the envelope or nothing else? Or
Whatever they receive, they open those envelopes once they go into the opening of the bid process.
Yeah.
If nothing is in the envelope, they will announce there's nothing in the envelope. If we have 1 bid, they will say that there is 1 bid. This is the 1 bid we received. If we did have an instance before we started that where somebody said, my bid came in at X time and you didn't do that. Well, if you're not transparent when you open the bids, what steps are you going to take to fight that?
No.
All bids should be open in public so that there are no questions.
You see,
so
Donna,
that was the only bid that she had.
It would be great if we knew what the bid was, if we knew something about the bid, at the time of the opening.
I apologize for the presentation, but the bid was the bid opening for bicycles. Maybe she didn't announce it properly. Only thing I could do is apologize for her presentation, but for now on, it will be done in public.
And Donna, will that be able to go out this summer?
Which bid?
The bicycle rental program.
That was the bid that they received. Now it goes to the bid committee or the RFP committee to see if they answered all of the questions within the RFP and whether they want to move forward with it.
So, is it feasible that it'll happen this summer?
Yes.
Or? Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Eileen Hessian. All right. Jay Gussler. Judy Beining.
Doing this is not so easy for me. Okay, I know the hearing for the change in the Code of Ordinances is going forward whenever it is.
On the
2 weeks.
6th.
On the 6th. But in reading what you've proposed, I never would have known to ask you this question at all, except that I made a phone call to the State Liquor Authority asking them about labeling in terms of the ice cream store, right? And what I was told is the State Liquor Authority is the Alcohol and Beverage Control Board. Therefore, they only have authority over beverages. One of those little quirks that you would never know. So when I'm reading this and it's saying it's Section 10, Chapter 18, sale, use, and possession of alcoholic beverages. My suggestion is that we say of alcohol or alcohol products. It doesn't really matter, because you can buy a cup of Tasty Scoops and it has no label on it that says alcohol, or anywhere else that, you know, it may happen. So in the interest of not having to undo something, I would suggest proactively that in that one little section it says, you know, sale, use, and possession of alcohol, and no person shall offer for sale any intoxicating beverage. I would probably either remove the word beverage or add or alcohol in any form.
Just one thing I'd like to point out on that. I believe it's the agricultural markets law that covers the like alcoholic ice cream. The food does state that the state regulations regarding the age of consumption and labeling are still in effect
Understood.
as far as what's...
I understood.
So that they're still considered, they're still covered under that still same portion of the law.
I understand that.
As far as
But I'm saying you're going to the Code of Ordinances where you're saying there's no alcohol permitted in the parks, the beaches, wherever. I would just, in the interest of clarity, either say in any form or remove the word beverage,
We'll take a look.
so that you don't have to redo it again.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Diedrich. No Diedrich? Okay, then that was it, and thanks for joining us, folks. And we will see you at the next meeting. And oh, by the way,
Recycling is?
What?
Recycling tomorrow is what?
Oh, recycling tomorrow is paper.
Paper.
And don't forget, there's primary voting going on, early voting right now in City Hall, and on June 22nd. So if you're a Democrat, vote. And everybody have a good 4th of July.
No.